everyone, and Ramadan Kareem, whoever is fasting. I hope you are enjoying your Ramadan and fasting. Thank you for joining us to celebrate creativity and innovation in the World Creativity and Innovation Day. We are happy to have you in this talk about the need for creativity and innovation in creating resilient smart cities. Dr. Esteban is going to lead this talk. Please allow me to introduce Dr. Esteban to you. Dr. Esteban Canepa, he is a co-founder and CTO of Sadeem International Company. He earned a PhD in electrical engineering from King Abdullah University of Science and Technology. He co-invented a patent technology in the smart city field, and he is the founder of the NGO Amal, which is a social organization aiming to empower young children through entrepreneurship and international education. Dr. Esteban, welcome. And speaking of creativity and innovation, in this special World Day of Innovation, how do you define the word innovation in your perspective?
Thank you very much, Bayan. It's really a great pleasure to have this session, and I strongly believe that we should talk more and more about innovation, not only one day, but every day of the year, actually. So it's my pleasure to be here. And what we're going to be having is literally kind of the perspective that we have observed from innovation, and particularly, I would say, tailored to what we do, which is basically cities and smart cities. And we can take it from there. And also, this is more a conversation about what innovation means for all of us and for everyone that lives in cities, which is most of the people. So I appreciate this opportunity. Answering your question about what is innovation, I always like to clarify that innovation, I think innovation sometimes when you talk to, in general, people tend to believe that it's related to someone in a lab doing like experiments and getting like these new technologies that are going to revolutionize the world. And that's one part of what innovation is, definitely. But when we really search about what is innovation and the definitions from like different entities that are doing studies about that, it really goes in a nutshell that innovation is really, it's simply doing something different and in a better way. It should be better than the previous status. So that's in a nutshell what innovation means. It's basically enhancing something. And it can be from a technology, of course, but it can be also from maybe a process that you have within your city, within your organization, a business plan, or different aspects. So innovation is really reachable to anyone that is willing to enhance some kind of process along the way. So that is how I see innovation and how I would define it. And I like this definition because it's really to say to everyone, look, anyone in any context can really innovate. As long as you improve what you were doing before, then you are actually going into that. And I really like the fact that they call it Innovation and Creativity Day because creativity is actually the seed of any innovation. If we go into a more formal definition of innovation, I would define it as innovation is the combination of two things, and they have to be present to call it an innovation. The first component is invention. So that's the novelty part of it. So there has to be something that someone creates, and that's where the creativity triggers, right? So something new has to be in the equation. But also the other part, and it's all equally important, is the implementation part. That normally means commercialization, for example. But that part has to be there. So meaning that for us to call that we're having innovations, and then we have a society of innovations, we need to be creating inventions, but also implementing them through a commercial plan, or through maybe from a governmental perspective, whatever the path we take for implementation, that's vital. And that's what I think sometimes we don't realize that is part of the equation, so we are lacking that. And in many regions of the world, I would say that they probably have the invention part, but they're lacking that implementation. So that is important, and that will be, let's say, to a more formal definition. Now, talking about what is in the literature about the innovation, there is this, well, there is some types of innovation, as they call it, and this is defined by kind of something called the Oslo Manual of Innovation, and they have different types of innovations, and there are literally four, which one of them is product innovations. I think that one is more, we see it more and more often because we see it on the companies and basically people building products that are changing the way we do things and all that. So that's one type of it. The other one is process innovation. So that's when you are changing a manufacturing process, for example. And that is also, we see it more and more when people tend to do things in a different way from a process point of view. The other one is like a marketing innovations that are also taking place nowadays. And last but definitely not least, we have organizational innovations. And that one, I believe, particularly the ones we have been focusing a lot, it's on the, of course, on the product innovations, because in our company, that's what we aim to develop. We develop new products that can be implemented. And also, some process innovations can be in place. I mean, sometimes you have to innovate on your business plans and all that. So this is what you see. From particularly the aspects, maybe talking a little bit about cities or urban areas, also organizational innovation needs to be in place. Is how is the government or how are governments relating to their cities? There has to be a new way and a better way to do that. So that is why I like these types of innovations, so we can see where we can play, and also from a governmental perspective, they can realize what are the aspects that they can start targeting to and all that. So that's more or less, I would say, my answer about what does it mean, what innovation means, now that we're talking more and more about it these days.
Cool, cool. Thank you, Dr. Esteban. So doing something different in a better way. This is very insightful definition of innovation, and invention and implementation goes absolutely hand in hand. So speaking and elaborating on that, what is the role of innovation for our cities? In other words, how can we use innovation for the sake of improving the cities that we live in?
That is a really deep question, I would say, or a rich question. The first, I would say, I will start saying that from the city's perspective, the latest data that we have is that by 2030, that's like in less than 10 years, we are going to have 60% of citizens in the world living on urban environments. So if we really sit down and think about that, that should kind of scare us a little bit, because that represents quite a challenge. Because most of people is going to be living on cities, and that represents a lot of optimization of resources, how to manage the big cities, and all the aspects that come, socially aspects that come inherent to all those things. And that thought is what really, that is why we need innovations on cities, right? We need to enhance drastically the process and the solutions that we currently have in our city. And that is how I see it. It's basically, if we really want to have a better future living in cities, that's where the job opportunities are. It makes sense that people is moving to cities, but also it should make sense that we emphasize how much we have to improve and innovate in our cities to be able to have a proper way of living in the years to come. I mean, if you think about it, like we are 9 years from 2030, so that's like right at the corner, and we still have a lot of work to do, I would say. And particularly, there is an interesting trend happening on cities. Our cities need to be resilient, and that is vital. And I believe that the leaders in the world are realizing and are understanding that, and they are doing more and more studies about what does it really mean to be a resilient city. And in a nutshell, being a resilient city is really just to go back to a normal state after any incident that occur in a city. That is really a simple way to define that. So it's like we have the way to recover the fastest possible way after any complication situation happen within our city. And of course, different cities have different contexts and different environments and all that, but that's really what it means. And that's what innovation plays a key role for that. If we really want to recover faster, we have to put solutions that allow us to do that. We need to have inventions that are implemented that allow us to recover really, really fast from that part. And now what we're seeing really is that in order to have a resilient city, I would say first, you need to have a smart city, which means that you need to have a city that is adopting or has adopted a lot of new technologies for the sake of management in the city first. So I can have a proper management, I can optimize my resources of a city and all that. And then when you have technology being applied, then you can think about how can I use this technology to increase my resilience. So that's really the way we are seeing and the way that new cities or cities nowadays, I would say, are evolving. And that is a trend. That is really the way we have to go for new cities to be in the innovation place, but also because it makes sense to the cities to have it. And if we check the numbers, we check the amount of people that is going to be living, but also we check the amount of limited resources that we have and the amount of impact that any incident in a city can have because of the citizens that you have, because I mean the fact that you have a lot of people living together in a constrained geographical region, it's challenging, and that is why we are developing technologies, and we strongly believe in that. It is to prepare our cities for the decades to come. We really need applied technology. And it makes all the sense in the world. That's how I see that they correlate a lot. But also cities need to understand why they're applying these innovations, right? That's, I think, the key. And the city managers need to realize why is it that innovation sounds nice and it sounds exciting, but why is it that my city needs it? What under my context, what is it that I'm going to be improving to make a smarter city and a more resilient city? So yeah, that is how I perceive this approach for that.
Great. So the city needs to be resilient to recover faster from any incident happen. And to do that, you need to have a smart city that have the technologies to be resilient. So you mentioned the word resilient. Can you give us like few examples about such technologies that the city need to have it to be resilient?
Yeah, there are I would say many technologies that are being implemented nowadays, and many of them comes into the fact of saying from the realization, I would say, that we need to prevent instead of react. So it's like prevention is always better, not only from a social perspective, but also from an economical perspective. So that is kind of the things that we are currently having. It's like it makes all the sense in the world. So we see now a trend of investments in saying, how can I prevent things from happening from my particular context within a city? So in that sense, we're seeing early warnings for earthquakes, if that is your context, for floods, for different aspects that are being applied nowadays. And the main goal of that is saying, when these natural hazards appear, the impact is going to be drastically low. I'm going to reduce that drastically. And that is kind of what we are seeing. It's like the technologies that are being applied are on the prevention side. If we're talking about resilience, right? There are also many technologies being applied for operation and management. And that is also vital because there is an optimization of resources that has to be in place. But the key aspect that we see on the area is like, okay, we have to prevent things from happening. And even if they happen, we have already tools that allow us to go and mitigate the situation faster. So it's like prevention and fast mitigation of things, these two components. And that's where many technologies or many, I would say, solutions are being applied in cities that are driven by technology. That's the way we have it. And also we have, it is important that when we talk about, the innovation in cities, there are many things that has to be in place. One of them, it's like that it has to be a human-centered design. So all these solutions, where they are technological but also social, right? So there has to be the human or the people living in the cities at the center of the design. So you have to understand how is it that they're going to play a key role in this, and how they're going to be, their life is going to be better thanks to this. Also, the resident engagement, which is highly correlated. It's okay, you design the solution thinking how we're going to enhance the situation for the city and the citizens, but also how they're going to engage to it. And that is highly socially related. You need to have the proper tools to understand how socially that's going to happen. Meaning that a technology that is implemented, for example, in one region of the world, we have to tune it to be implemented in another region because of the social context and the resident engagement that you need to have. That is part of what needs to occur. And also, there is some key role that I really want to mention when it comes to technology applied for cities, that is experimentation. And it's one of the key factors or key aspects of innovation is that. So that's where I see that cities are having a challenge, I would say, because at the end of the day, they don't tend to realize that in order to have innovations, you need to have some context to experiment, right? What does that mean? This means that you are able to allow new technologies to be tested in your city and being validated and making sure that you're realizing the benefits that it's bringing. So that is what I see that sometimes the cities are lacking. They have this, because for innovation to happen, you need a lot of experimentation. So if we want that to happen in cities, we need that. Of course, we need to put the proper context for that to happen. But I believe that nowadays there are competitions and some initiatives to say, okay, we're going to do a proof of concept, we're going to do a pilot project to test these new technologies. So I think it's a work in progress, but we should advance more on this. And city leaders should realize that that's where we have to, I say, put an emphasis on like experiment on that in a controlled environment, but never stop doing it if you really want to have technologies applied and solutions applied to your city.
Great. So experimentation is essential to develop technologies for the cities to be more resilient to recover from incidents faster. So are there new trends of current innovations in the cities, whether whether it's the new initiatives beside the one that you mentioned, whether they are new initiatives or new technologies that may transform and shape smart cities to become more resilient?
Yeah. So the trend that we're observing nowadays in cities, and keep in mind that cities are part of our, I mean, cities are not independent of the global challenges that we're having nowadays, right? Actually, that's where we probably see them the most, because that's where most people is going to be living within the coming years. So in that sense, basically what we're having is that all these global challenges that are appearing, they are impacting our cities. So the trend that we're seeing is that there is a lot of efforts taking place in kind of the digitalization of the water management. Water is a really limited resource everywhere. And the fact that we have to optimize that resource and making sure we can manage in a better way, that's where we see a lot of or a trend into the water management being digital in the cities, right? You don't want to lose water because of leakage and these kind of things, but also you want to make sure that the quality of your water is, is the one you need for your citizens, and also the supply of that resource. So it's a limited resource. We know that. We know that is going to be a challenge for all of our, for one of all the global challenges, and is cities are not independent of that. So we really see this trend of the digitalization of the water management. Another trend we see is kind of the aspects of emergency response for citizens. So in cities, things happen, right? It's like accidents happen, incidents happen, many things are happening because there's many people there. So the more we optimize this emergency response, and that's where we see a trend. We see a trend in how can we, if you go to cities in the world nowadays, you see more and more technologies to enhance the safety of citizens and enhance the emergency response. Meaning that if something happens, if there is an accident, if there is a situation that is really complex within a neighborhood, then you want to immediately respond. And that's where we are seeing also a lot of one really big trend in safety in cities and emergency response, so citizens can feel safer in a city. Another aspect of cities, another trend is definitely mobility. I mean, cities is all about going to your work, you have to move on cities. And sometimes we move long distances or we move for a lot of time. So that is where we see another trend. It's on the kind of mobility management. We see a trend that technologies are being applied there, and how can we optimize the public transport, making sure that it's efficient or the most efficient we can have according to the infrastructure we have. So citizens can feel that they don't spend too much time on traffic jams and these kind of things. So mobility management is vital. And it makes all the sense in the world, because the more optimal you have that, then the less time, more productivity in your city. You want city to be that you have more productivity. That means it's going to be more attractive to companies to go on and establish there, because that's a city that enhances productivity and all that, a good quality of life. So that is why, in a sense, cities they're competing against each other for these kind of things, right? So it's like, where do you choose to go? Because there are opportunities, but also good quality of life and all that. So yeah, mobility is one of the vital things that cities are having. And another one that we're seeing, and again, it's just because cities are within the global context, is the aspects of climate adaptation and mitigation. So these are two interesting concepts. I mean, climate mitigation is related to reducing what is causing the climate change, reducing emissions, anything that is doing emissions that are not beneficial for our environment. And that's basically the definition of climate mitigation. Cities, basically, they are investing also technology, or investing in technologies with how you are going to have electricity for your citizens in an urban area. Mobility is related to this, because the more you make it efficient, the more people spend on traffic and less consumption of fuel and these kind of things, right? So there is a strong approach in doing climate mitigation solutions in cities. And then another aspect is the climate adaptation. Climate adaptation basically means, okay, we are working on reducing emissions and all that, but independent of how good that can get, right now we're having some effects that we are seeing in our cities, right? It's like there are some stronger floods, stronger rain events, and then they're becoming more frequent and all that. So we are already observing some effects. So how can we adapt? That's what it really means. It's like, how can I make sure that I know I'm going to have some effects? How can I react better and all that? So that's when it relates a lot to resiliency and all these concepts. So these are, I would say, the four global trends that I that we have observed in the investments of cities and all that, because it makes total sense. It's basically what it's an outcome of the current context that we are observing in worldwide and all that. So, and it's related to the optimizing the resources that a city have, and yeah, so that's the global trends that we see.
Cool. So, speaking of technologies and initiatives, are absolutely is endless to talk about these technologies that can enhance the cities to become smarter and more resilient. And whether it's digitalization, as you mentioned, of water management, or technologies that can enhance safety of citizens, such as emergency responding that you mentioned, and mobility, or whether it's climate adaptation and mitigation. So we have various technologies and various initiatives that are currently trending globally to enhance the resilient of cities to become more smarter and sustainable. And yeah, thank you, Dr. Esteban, for elaborating in that. And yes, we have plenty of time to open the door for more discussion and more questions from the audience if they have. So please feel free, if you have any question, feel free to raise it, speak up, or you can type it in the chat room.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, we we can open the panel for questions or comments, or maybe you have a comment on one of the perspectives that we have. Yeah, we encourage people, and as you say, just speak up or type it, but hopefully speak up. That will be interesting, so we can expand on that from the perspective of what does it really mean innovation in our city.
Yes, if I may ask a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, my name is Mohamed. I'm a master's student here at KAUST University. So that's a really interesting talk, and I'm now just more curious how Sadeem is fitting in this conversation, like in this, and the vision of Sadeem, how it is going to be more innovative and creative. Because you have a good product, but I would expect that you have since you talk about innovation, that you have more innovative products, like for 2030, as you said, or things like that. Yeah, beyond what you have now.
Yeah, exactly. Well, right now we are really focusing a lot on, among the global trends that we are observing on cities. We're focusing a lot on like the climate adaptation. That's like really how can we, with our technologies, enhance that part. That's one thing. So we will keep that, I would say, along the way, because it is vital for the coming years. It's gonna be, just to give you an example, it makes total economic sense. Every dollar invested on like prevention, like if a city invests $1 on prevention, $1, they can save up to $9 on recovery. Why? Because they have a really solid investment on prevention, and the recovery after an incident or a kind of a disaster, it's gonna be less costly. And even the international organizations are saying this is the way we should go. So that is why, from a technological perspective, that's one of the way we're gonna go. But also we have, the operation and management of cities, right? We're gonna have more and more restricted, I would say, resources. So that is why we're also on that aspect particularly. If you think about it, when we're talking about emergency response, that goes beyond climate adaptation. It also goes about safety and these kind of things. Or, for example, the water management. The water management is not only about the tap water that you drink, but it's also about the water on the drainage, the water from the rain, and these kind of things. And all this is being digitalized, and it goes beyond having a flood or a rain. It goes about your day-to-day operations into how you can enhance. So that's where we're going to be moving for the coming years. And of course, to always keep an eye on what are the trends coming from to making our cities better and all that. But that's really the lines that we're going to follow. And the main thing really is that these project implementations are really highly social. So we want to keep really that area highly, I would say, active in our project. So meaning that we have to understand the context in which we are implementing these technologies and all that. It's all about that. Keep in mind the resident engagement is vital. So that is one of the things that how we see ourselves. Well, actually, I have a question for you. What do you study in CAUS? You're a master's student of what field?
I'm working in outdoor localization. I'm electrical engineering with Professor Tariq al-Nafuri. And and we're trying to enhance the accuracy of localization using GPS when we're utilizing multiple receivers.
Okay, yeah, exactly. I mean, these kind of things, for example, like such a research can be at some point applied for many of the global trends. I mean, one of the key things is like citizen emergency response. Like you want your response teams to be faster, more efficient, and react better, right? That's one, and then what's one trend. And I think it's really vital because the more and more people that is living on cities, the more and more challenging that for firefighters, for police, or kind of anyone that is involved into an emergency situation. So yeah, that's I think that the fact that we can understand these trends, so we can start realizing how we can apply them, is really vital. So the point really is that also we understand that there has to be a strong link between what researchers like you are doing in the lab to what the cities are demanding, right? So we have to really keep always that bridge of conversation active and like all the time. And that is why we want to engage more with cities, and we want to do this actually more often, so we can bring to the table and talk about these things and really fully understand how can we adapt these solutions. Keep in mind, always innovation. If you're creating something novel, that's brilliant, but also the implementation. We cannot forget that part. Otherwise, it's going to kind of just be in a drawer, your invention, and it's not going to see the light. And I believe that any researcher, really, they want to see that their solutions are being implemented. Thank you, Mohamed. Any other question from the audience?
I think.
Yeah, I think we have no further questions. Great. Well, thank you very much for everyone connecting. It's really good to talk about innovation, especially on cities, which is where we are more involved, definitely. And as a final conclusion, I would say that I think we have to talk more and more about this, and really I'm glad that there is an International Day of Innovation, and that we can definitely talk about it, and especially key that people, keep in mind that for cities, in cities, that the innovations can come from any citizen there. Like we have a group of people doing things and realizing the kind of pain points that they have within their context. So as simple as saying, okay, what can we enhance this process of, for example, collecting the trash without any technology being applied, but just enhancing with like creativity. That's why also the day is called creativity. So that I will encourage everyone to think this way, into how can I improve it? How can I use my creativity to maybe enhance this process that I see in a city that is not the optimal, and these kind of things. And that's where we really start finding solutions, and that can be applied. And that's where we can start talking about innovation in cities. We don't have to go that along the way in terms of, oh, we need a super novel technology that is going to come to revolutionize the way we live in cities. I mean, it's going to come eventually, but before that, I would say we can always break down the challenges into smaller ones and try to find the solutions for it with creativity. So yeah, that will be kind of my final thought.
Yeah. We have another question here in the chat. What is the role of data? And what is the role of data, and what is the role, the relationship between data and innovation? Speaking of innovation, yes.
Well, I think data is an innovation enabler, I would say, because in order to have an invention or create something novel, you need to have, I mean, creativity is not like, it's not really magic, right? It comes from like, okay, I understand how something works, and then using my intelligence, I can propose new things and come up with new ideas. So in order to have more creativity for the city, then the more data we have, I would say, we have a better ground for creativity and novelty, right? Mm-hmm. If I'm realizing what is happening in my city and what is taking place because I have the data, not just assuming what is happening, but actually knowing from data, then I can start triggering my creativity, or the team creativity, the city manager's creativity, and everything, to say, okay, now I know how I can do better. And also, what I really like about data is that it's validational, right? It's like saying, okay, if I'm gonna enhance my mobility thanks to this novel solution that we're proposing, is it really being enhanced? So that's where data confirms that, right? It's like on both sides. It's like with data, you can start picturing new things and picturing new solutions, but also then if you apply it, that's the experimentation part, then with data, you can confirm that it was a really solid decision, and you can enhance that, and you can even make it bigger, make a project or things like that, because it's giving results. The data is saying that it's giving results. So yeah, it's not only an enabler, but also confirms that the solution it's something that is it's something that is giving positive results.
Good. Thank you, Dr. Esteban. And we have another question. What is the relation between innovation and smart cities? Does a smart city need to have innovation to be smart?
Well, I wouldn't say that doesn't, yeah, so we can have a smart city that doesn't necessarily have innovation. I would say yes to that, because you can have cities that have technology applied, and there are cities that are smart nowadays. So the point is, like, they have, I mean, to be smart, I would say at some point they have to try things, right? But let's imagine a city that it's already smart, so meaning that they have technology applied to optimize the resources, right? They are optimizing the operation and management of a day-to-day. It's really optimized thanks to technologies and all that. So it's already smart. Now, it can continue being that smart for many, many years. But if you want to enhance that situation, that's when you have the innovation part. That's when you have to say, how can we make it even better than what we currently do it? So yeah, I mean, I would say that innovation, it's what makes cities smarter. It doesn't matter on which, I would say, a scale of how smart your city you are. You might be starting, or you might have a really smart city, you know, with the really a lot of technologies adopted already. But if you want to enhance that and make it one more level smarter, then that's when you need the innovation part.
Absolutely. There is always a room for more creativity and more innovation for the city to be smarter and smarter, whatever the current level is.
Yeah, and also what I see honestly is that if you relax about that, right? You say, okay, my city is already smart, so we can, I don't know, relax about innovation. The challenge that I see is that because more and more people is going to go to your city just because that's the global trend, then that increase of population and all that is gonna, I would say, push you a little bit backwards in terms of how smart you are, because now what you had already maybe is not sufficiently, and it's not enough for in 5 years when your population drastically grow and you have more houses and things like that. So that is why we should keep innovation all the time, because your cities are like a living organism, right? They're evolving, they're always shaping, sometimes controlled, sometimes completely out of control, but they're always, and each city is different. It's like whatever solution you have in this city doesn't necessarily apply for the other one. So having that in mind means that the best chance we have is to always keep innovation in the equation, to react faster and make sure we account for the changes that are coming every time to our city.
Great. We have another interesting question. It says,
Good.
does innovation restricted on technology?
Not at all. Not at all. Yeah, and that's a really important question, and I would always mention that innovation is not only about technology. That's what I would say, maybe the approach we see from media and all that. But really, innovation is about enhancing something, like doing a process that is better. Even we can innovate in our life, right? If you really see it that way. I mean, it's like, okay, what I do in my daily life. I mean, the way I go to the supermarket, it's probably the best way to do it. I can enhance that, and that's an innovation that I'm applying to my own life. So in a way, like now you are in a neighborhood, and then you have a situation that is complicated, and you have a problem, and you are not a technological person. Right? It's like you just live there. But then we can use creativity that is not related sometimes to technology. It's just our own intelligence being applied to something, and thinking about how we can solve this, and to enhance something in my neighborhood, for example, and say, okay, why instead of doing this way, we don't do it the other way around, and that's it. That's an innovation. I would call that an innovation, and we see more and more, and I think that they're empowering more and more the people to bring these innovations, saying you can do. At the end of the day, you are the one that are suffering that pain, right? When you live in a neighborhood that has this problem and these kind of things, sometimes it's the creativity of that, and I think that is why we have to, I would say, talk more about this, and removing the I would say bias of having innovation. Oh, it's only for science. Right. No way, it's for everyone. It's reachable to everyone, because it's just enhancing a process. I already talked about the 4 types of innovation. So one of that is just enhancing an organization, or enhancing a process that you have within your organization. So yeah, that's so definitely. I encourage everyone to do innovations, because also it's like a muscle, right? It's like if you really think about how to enhance things and put your mind to work in those creativities, you are gonna be able to do it maybe faster. It's like, I would say it's like a muscular thing. You start realizing, how can we solve this? Okay, we have a limited budget. There are plenty of things, and you see examples, right, of people saying, okay, we need to solve this situation. We can use a super technology that is super expensive, or some people say, well, why don't we just change the way the process is done, and then we don't even need that. So that's a process innovation, and there. So that's what I would encourage everyone to really do not think about innovation that is only related to technology.
Right. So in any field or any area, there is always a room for improvement. Doing something different in a better way is what it takes to be creative and innovative. So, and for cities, prevention, not to react. So to prevention is better than to react in the incident of
Yeah,
any in a incident. Speaking of climate change or natural hazards,
or
so prevent, not react.
robbery or things like that. I mean,
Right.
there are solutions being applied that you are using uh, algorithms and artificial intelligence to know where is most likely to happen a dangerous situation, so you can prevent. It's all about prevention, right? So it's like that kind of
Prevent, not
the
to react.
trend.
This is a very insightful and better strategy for smart cities to take, actually, nowadays. Dr. Esteban, I wish that we can extend the time to talk more about creativity and innovation and how we can apply it to improve the cities that we live in. But for sure, we are going to arrange more talks like that in the near future to spread the awareness and engage the public with the latest news and trends in the smart city fields, technologies, and others. Thank you very much, Dr. Esteban, for your time. And thank you, everyone, for joining us in this talk. And hope to see you again for more talks to come.
Great, thank you, Bayan, for organizing this. It's great, and we are gonna do, as you said, more and more often to have these interesting conversations and awareness of what we should be doing with our city for the coming years. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. I hope everyone enjoyed this and about innovation. And see you next time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.